Hello, everybody. This is the Seattle Overload podcast where the Seahawks have won for the second week in a row. How about that? And Griff and I are going to talk about it. But first, a bit of a preamble to let everyone join in. I know there's a Sunday night football game going along right now, so appreciate you spending your evening with us along with that game. Of course. Griff, do you have anything you want to preamble on?
There's always something, and then I forget. I'll be out and about doing something random, like, oh, I should annoy
That would
Maddie.
be a good bit.
I should annoy Maddie about this, and then I forget to annoy you about it.
Annoy? I
Yeah.
never get annoyed.
Is that right?
That being said, the preamble last week appeared to be quite popular with certain listeners.
See, Maddie, it's interesting because you are English and I am American.
It's funny that I'd never
It gets the people
never
going.
thought of that one.
Yeah. You can't fool us with your American college football hat on either.
Well, this is in support of a certain alumni.
Oh, that's right.
Alumnus.
That's right.
Yeah. Also, Backyard Brawl. Did you see the game?
Backyard. What now?
Brawl.
I don't know that. What is that?
West Virginia lost 38-34 to Pitt.
Oh, blast.
Yeah. Darn.
Blast. All right, Maddie, what are your I got one for you. What are your favorite safe for work English expletives? Like do you ever drop something and just go blast? Because Ewan McGregor says blast a lot as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I just think that's a great, dang it, alternative.
I don't have any. I never get upset.
No, you have some, but I know you code switch around your American friends.
Yeah. And honestly, it's very hard for me to switch back. And that, the switch is on for the next, 2 hours.
Right. Well, because it's not natural. Is it natural for you to speak in your regular manner of speaking around Americans? Because you associate me, with a mode of speaking, right? So it's just not is it instinctual, or are you fighting against instinct?
I do work with Americans as well, so yeah.
I can tell you're enjoying this. All right. Or rather, I'm enjoying it and you are not.
No, do you want to hear a preamble topic, Griff?
Sure. Let's
So I woke up yesterday at 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Very early. Anyway.
That is early for
and
you.
I turned the tap on before work. I turned the tap on. It was actually 8:30.
Sure.
Turned the tap on and nothing came out the tap.
Oh no.
So then I Googled our water company, and everywhere in the area had been cut off from water, and it couldn't tell you when it was going to be put back on. So I went to the shops and bought some more water, and then I came back, and then the water wasn't on until 5 p.m. So I had a shower at 5 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling very dirty. And then thinking the water had been fixed, the water went out again. And so at 10 p.m., there was an apocalyptic scene outside the complex or block that I live in has a management company. That makes it sound like a gated community. It's not that. But anyway, I don't know how to describe it.
No.
But anyway, they were handing out bottles of free water, but there was 200 people surging, trying to... It was proper looter mentality. Everyone losing their minds over the lack of water and the drinking water. And anyway, then I went to my local round the corner shop and I got the last bottle of still water. And I was genuinely considering whether you could shower in sparkling water. Do you think sparkling water would wash you as well as normal water?
Yeah.
Would it be sticky?
Well, see, I think it would be because of the preservatives they add in there. Additionally, the quote unquote natural flavors and stuff. That's where.
But if it's literally just sparkling water, no flavors, just sparkles in there.
I don't see why it would be a problem.
Uh-huh.
It may not be cost
If anything, it might be more, cleansing.
Maybe.
Bit fizz.
Well, Maddie, I'll tell you what. How about you go ahead and try it, and then get back to us.
Yeah. Well, in the end, the water came back on, so I didn't have to do that. But
right.
it, as Taylor says, that's what's I'm not familiar with that popular culture reference.
You got that's the next movie the chat and I need to bully you about. You need to watch this movie.
Right.
I can't believe as an Englishman you haven't seen this film.
Well, yeah, with Clive Owen. Yeah.
And it takes place in British soil. So
Yeah, well, because I've seen, those good film accounts tweet out the opening clip from it, which is
yeah.
in London, right, with a red bus.
Yeah, there are a lot of iconic camera work sequences in that movie, and
Cool.
a lot of them.
Cool.
Clive Owen's really good.
Okay, right. Should we do our podcast then?
Yeah, hit it.
Oh,
Matty.
the snail. Thank you so much. Thank you for the donation. And yeah, that was very funny that Washington State ended up, they played at a neutral site, not in September when, not later in the year, but in September when the Huskies probably are still ironing stuff out, and then the Huskies lost. But I don't want to alienate half our fan base. Anyway, let's talk about the NFL, shall we? Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where the Seattle Seahawks are 2-0, their first place in the NFC West, albeit joint, after a 23-20 road victory against the New England Patriots, which was by no means simple, but it was a victory, and it was fun, and there's a lot of good things, which we're going to talk about. There was some concerning stuff, and I think, in a way, Griff, this is very much a team who they look like what they are. The expression on paper, they'd be this. Well, in reality, on my television screen, they also appear to be that too.
Yeah, this team is it's not a mystery right now. It's very clear. It's an easy team to project as projecting teams go. And I don't always feel that way about the Seahawks. Sometimes it's hard to know with them, but all the results right now flow from their strengths and weaknesses. And I feel like what we can say right now is that they are way better than the bad teams, the Broncos, and they are just a notch better than in this moment anyway, a notch or two better than the average competent-esque teams like the Patriots would. The Patriots are, I think, not as talented as they need to be be a fringe playoff team, but they're really well coached and well situated, and they just don't have enough juice. And so the Seahawks ended up winning a war of attrition against them, which I think we both predicted. Many people predicted. They just were too much in the end, and that was true. So that's really good information, and it's like, okay, well, can this team take the next step? How do they fare against another firmly better than average team? Now, there's a lot of room between the top of the league and better than average. Where do the Seahawks fall on that end of the spectrum? I don't know yet, but we do know that they are better than the Patriots of the league right now, and that they're way better than the Broncos of the league. So it will be interesting to see, and where they end up falling on that spectrum will be determined by how much their weaknesses matter, which their weaknesses showed up in this game, and how much their strengths can be fully taken advantage of and applied and leveraged against the opposing team. So this game, a lot of meat was left on the bone, and simultaneously there were a lot of dumb things that held them back at the same time. So there's or rather, things could have been even worse, I should say. So I don't know. How did you feel about this game?
Well, very boring, but obviously I agree. It was funny though, because obviously I watched it a bit after the fact, so I was a bit calmer because I did happen to see what happened, but which was a shame because watching that live would have been, I think, infuriating in some ways. It just the manner of they seemed so in control of the game, and then just through I mean, it was nice to see him against a better opponent, right? In the Patriots. I think the Patriots, like for all the things you've said, they're a good side. They're by
Right.
no means the best side, and if you look at Seattle's schedule in terms of when it's their chance to prove themselves against like the top opposition, you would think, or you would have thought, that Miami was that opportunity next week at home. But obviously now Tua Viola is out for sure in that game. And so that suddenly looks like a different proposition, albeit they have talent elsewhere. Maybe it's a similar type game to what we've seen today, albeit Miami probably having a better offensive talent, or not at the quarterback position now, and maybe a slightly worse defense. But I think they're a well-coached team who offensively will put you in a bind with the run game also. But then after that, you have Monday Night Football with the Lions, the Giants, who look appalling, then the 49ers, and then the Falcons and the Bills, who we're still learning about. But there's going to be some good teams on the schedule coming. We said before the season, if they weren't 2-0 by this point, we'd be somewhat disappointed. It was a great opportunity for Mike McDonald to jumpstart his season, his campaign as his first campaign as Seahawks head coach. And that's the position they've put themselves in, while not really answering any of or proving that the doubts we had about them were misplaced, but at the same time proving, hey, our strengths are definitely our strengths, and we're really good in these areas. So let's start with a strength, Griff. Geno Smith, absolutely. I think I asked, how many better games has Geno Smith played in a Seattle jersey than this one? Because this has to be in the top 5 of games in a Seahawks uniform. I mean, it goes. Sorry, I'll just read out his stats.
No,
33 completions on 44 attempts, 327 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. That's an average of 7.4. He took 3 sacks for 15 yards, which were largely unavoidable. But really, the box score, Griff, doesn't reflect how impressive what he did was here.
Yeah, and what's really cool is he has that raw yardage with only 1 completion beyond 20 yards of air yards. So they really only connected on one shot play, and even that was a complete bust mistake by the Patriots. So he was hitting. He was elite, really sharp in quick game, and then really sharp on like lower kind of small ball stuff. Or it's not always like anything underneath 8 yards isn't always a check down. Like sometimes it's just the progression, and you have a high read and a low read. He was really sharp at all of that, all encompassing quick game checkdowns and just lower reads in the progression. And then when it was time to hit the high intermediate area, I mean, he was just nails. Like that one blaze out to Jackson Smith and Jigba, that was an elite route from JSN, and then perfect rhythm and accuracy and timing from Geno. And then he hit that really cool, like kind of high cross. It was like a 9-8-9 thing, except the outside receivers weren't running true 9s. It was like they were running deep stop routes. But anyway, similar progression. And JSN split the wall defenders in that like zone pressure.
The 3rd and 7 completion, is that?
It was that deep over the middle, like the 18, 19 yard mark.
Yeah. That was astonishing, because not only was, as you said, it was a wall pressure. So the way that the Patriots got into that, even with Seattle keeping Noah Fant in like a 2-back type look to pick that pressure up, there was a guy coming free off the edge, and Gino knew he was coming free, and he slid in the pocket like the very best of quarterbacks do. He started sliding left to buy himself time from that free rusher coming right. Zach Charbonnet in the backfield did a great job picking up the first of the free rushes by protection design. And Gino just delivered an absolute dot to JSN. And that was just high-level, tight window quarterback play. And in this game, he was, I felt, and Griff, you may have some numbers to talk on this. I felt Ryan Grubb had learned somewhat from the first game, in that he'd learned about his offensive line. He knew the type of front the Patriots were. And I think he came in with a bit more of a run-first approach, or a bit more of a running on early downs. Maybe the data doesn't reflect that, but at the same time, to try and clear up protection and make things a bit easier on the O-line, I thought there was a bit more empty whereas empty was a big part of the game plan in this game to try and spread them out, get the ball out quick, but also, as I said, simplify the looks for them up front,
Right.
which kind of worked, kind of didn't. But ultimately, the offensive line still struggled, and Gino was in some pockets where he was getting hit, he was having to slide away from stuff. Again, it's easy to beat up on an offensive line, but Laken Tomlinson had some rough moments. Christian Haynes, I think, had a tough rep against Dietrich Wise. I mean, the Pats have some real talent up front as well. This isn't just to bash up on the O-line. It was a tough matchup for Seattle.
Even Keon White was losing to I mean, not Keon White. Connor Williams was losing to Keon White, but Keon White is a special player, though. He's really intriguing. But yeah, it was not a great state. And I think to your point about them spreading it out, that seems a little counterintuitive, right? Because if you have a bad O-line, why are you only trying to protect with 5? Although there were some cool protection wrinkles that Grubb had sprinkled in there, like
which reminded me of the
guy.
Sorry, yeah,
but I was just
reminded
say,
me of the UW variant. You know, I've banged on about how he found ways to try and vary what they were doing. Well, on the Metcalf slot fade touchdown is the first example of Fant blocking the edge, which it looks fancy, and if that edge beats your tight end, you look stupid, but it's just enough variance and a different wrinkle and a different way of helping the O-line pass protect in 5-man. Well, it becomes 6-man, but it's, empty pass pro that it gets the job done, and it switches the weak point and moves that around. So that was impressive. Sorry to cut you off.
It makes sense. It makes sense that Grubb would have all these ways of varying the protection because he's so spread out all the time, right? So he doesn't just want to half slide every time. Or if he gets 5 down, just man protection. And he's been really creative because there are only so many things you can do when you're in 2x2 and 3x2 all the time. But further to your point, if it feels counterintuitive, well, why only protect with 5? Well, you face a lot of man coverage that ties into, or you can identify matchups. You know that the guy lined up across from your favorite receiver is probably covering him, as opposed to zone where you can do something different. So I think it was just to aid getting the ball out quickly and knowing where you can go with the ball pre-snap. But the other thing with this one, they couldn't run block today. I don't know. Well, I mean, that was a little surprising.
Well, let's talk about that quickly. Just statistics wise, it's shocking. They had 19 rushing attempts for a 2.4 yards per carry average. I'm hoping that excludes quarterback sneaks, but Zach Charbonnet was 14 carries for 38 yards. He really struggled to get going on the ground.
I don't think he was bad necessarily.
No, and when I say get going, he struggled to get production. Ken Walker was inactive with the oblique, or was it abdominal? I always get them mixed up for some reason.
Oblique.
It was an oblique, yes. He was inactive with that. And I feel this was a sort of game where his style of just being creative occasionally and bouncing out might have worked. At the same time, the Patriots seemed to just be kicking butt, particularly on the interior of the offensive line and getting serious pushback that basically meant there wasn't room to cut back, and even a maybe more explosive back like in the preseason, we saw Kenny McIntosh really have burst out of his first cut. I think even though McIntosh should have struggled in this game because, I mean, we'll have to watch back the tape, right? But it just looked like there was no room, and they were just getting mauled up front, and they're getting their butts kicked, which was a disappointment because I'd said, after the last game, we'd praised what they did against the Broncos. And by the way, the Broncos were pretty soft run defense-wise. This was a very different level of run defense in terms of what the Pats were bringing to it. But I'd been impressed with what Grubb was able to do, and I think they'll be so disappointed that the run game wasn't able to get going. I think some of what they were doing in the run game, they sort of almost started going, well, we can't run it, so we're going to do the RPO because we need some way of getting like easy, low risk chunk plays here, like early down chunk plays. And really the RPO stuff, again, I don't have the numbers, it's more anecdotal, but it didn't feel like it was overly successful. The Pats were very disciplined on it. They were beating blocks. They were getting it done. And all of this to say, with this context, it makes what Gino did even more impressive because he kind of had to get it done in some horrid 3rd and longs or 3rd and mediums, which to one point, Grubb, when without the penalties, he did a fairly good job And Seattle had 6 for 50 yards, which I imagine 4 of those were on offense. But they did a fairly good job of getting into third and medium, not third and long. But there were some third and longs, and yeah, just great performance from Geno with all the context of this, how this offense struggled around him. And we haven't even talked about the drops yet.
Yeah, we haven't. That back shoulder fade to Jackson was. I mean, it was a
second
great
and 20.
It was a great route and a great adjustment from JSN. He just couldn't bring the ball in. That was really tragic. That was a pretty play until the very end of it. The other thing with this offense, unfortunately, Grubb called a good game, but like they can't score points. They moved the ball, but it was 23 points on 12 drives. So that's a pretty low point per drive.
3 points in the second half, where they were that's what I mean by in control. It was like, okay, a bit of a shaky start on defense. Okay, the Pats had a drive where they had 2 penalties which extended it, and then big chunk play, and then Seattle seemed to get things sorted. But you're up 17-13 at the half. Let's settle down. It's your first 10 a.m. game, new era. Let's go and win the game. And the offense just collapsed. They couldn't score points.
It's probably just variance or statistical noise, but it was the same thing last year where it's like the EPA loved them, but then the points didn't because they're not scoring the points. And really it comes down to like it comes down to a lack of overt air yard explosives so that you're flipping the field and getting like deep air yard touchdowns, and then also like red zone efficiency. And I don't think that they were bad in the red zone, but they had only 1 touchdown in the red zone, and they only scored 2 touchdowns, period, right? But I think their other 2 red zone trips were field goals, right? It's not enough data to really say, but it definitely it's once again like when you're in a shorter area of the field. And you can't leverage the speed of your receivers as a strength. It's time to win in tight quarters, and that's where all of your talent on your offense, the total sum of the talent, gets revealed. And the O-line can't win in short space, and the receivers counterintuitively, like that's not the best area of the field for them. I think part of it is not helped by the fact that they just don't have a go up and get it guy. Like Grubb has the same ethos.
Don't they?
Well, Bobo, yeah. But but Grubb has the same ethos when he gets into the high red zone as the last guy, in that as soon as he's like near the 20, he's trying to throw a touchdown because he knows they don't really have the pass concepts, but they don't have the receivers to match the necessary pass concepts to just get touchdowns, throwing touchdowns inside the 10 or even inside the 15. So like as soon as they hit the 25 to 20 yard mark, even the 30-yard mark, Grubb's thinking about, I need to score a touchdown like now. Otherwise it's a field goal. So we see those.
And that's exacerbated when you're struggling to run the ball, right? Even in the open field, and then it gets even tied to and close to it in the 10 and in or got red zone situations. And obviously last week we didn't see any red zone trips, did we? So this is kind of the first time we've seen this play out in the regular season. In a way though, like I keep coming back to the drops, Griff, because you can talk about the type of game Grubb wanted to call and all that sort of stuff, but if Noah Fant catches that drop on 1st and 10 with 1 minute 54 seconds left at New England's 24-yard line, where he was wide open on a quick out route, there was Yak, he'd have probably got a first down. Then you 1st and 10 from their 14-yard line, just needing a field goal to tie the game, but you've got a lot of time to go and win the game. You're viewing it differently because it's like a Yak type of catch on a shallow route where he kept trying to call shallow routes where it was from the backside and they'd have 3 guys on the other side run off the coverage that way, and the Pats would get run off, and then you'd have to have a guy taking that shallow back. And the Fant thing was a quick out, but he did other things like that where it looked like there was an opening in terms of trying to get the receiver skill sets, those yards in the tighter spaces, Griff, but it just didn't. Yeah. The execution was poor. I mean, if we just rattle through the other drops, the like, what do we want to call that? Is it strike, the DK play action?
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah.
But is
What
it
do we
like
call it? Because
use?
what does Grub call
Is a
it?
Z slide? Is it a Z though? I think DK was on the ball there, but yeah. It was tipped, but DK had his hands on it. Then DK straight up dropped to outside slant route on 2nd and 8, which then gives you 3rd and 8 on the road. Good luck. Fan had a 3rd and 8, which was slightly high, but he should have caught that really. And Gino was under a lot of pressure and got whacked. JSN then had that back shoulder drop that we talked about. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. What do you think about the decision from with the offense putting that drive together towards the end of the regular playing time? What do you think of the decision after the 3rd and 1 QB sneak got stuffed for Mike McDonald to kick the field goal rather than go through the 4th and 1?
Yeah, that was strange. And then to bluff twice, I would have tried to have gone for it.
Because obviously they've been stuffed earlier in the game on a 4th and 1.
Yeah, and you wonder, like, was that McDonald or was that Grubb not wanting to? Like, what was that conversation like on the mics between those two?
And how many 4th and 1 play calls did they have in the book? Because they'd called 2 already in the game. One had been successful, one hadn't. One was a sneak, which they'd also called a lot of other times, and then one was the run which got stuffed, which is like I-form type run. So
right.
I don't know. That was a bit odd.
Right. Yeah, it was odd. Another note on the offense. So, like, they're bad at screens again now. I think Chenault had that one on the 2nd and 20 to DK. That's technically a screen. And then Chenault had 2 good ones, but I think Grubb probably
early in the game, Fan
like
missed a block, which like designed for him to be the big block, and he just can't block.
Yeah, and the thing with Fan, like, I don't want to plant any flags 2 weeks into the season, but like they really screwed up in how they allocated some of their cap this past offseason. I would feel so much better about this team if Damian Lewis and Jordan Brooks were Seahawks compared to just the alternatives. But like, it is what it is, especially on offense, man. Like, not all of Fant's cap would have gone to Lewis. He would have had to scrounge up a couple more dollars here and there to afford Lewis. And I get it, not wanting to pay Lewis that much on principle, but still, like, they have a huge left guard problem. And then the additional irony of them having a left guard problem makes Fant even less valuable because the protection can't get him the ball. Now he's a screen guy and a check down guy. Is that what you're paying your tight end $10 million a year to be? And it's not because Grubb isn't using him right. It's because he can't use him any other way because someone has to soak up the small ball stuff. It's so it's just is what it is there, and it's unfortunate, but it just doesn't. It doesn't make sense for the team. It's a little frustrating there. So JSN though and DK Metcalf had monster games all in all. The drops and such. I mean, that's going to have when you have high usage. There's a greater chance for having screwing up too. Obviously, the good outweighs the bad.
And I feel like Lockett had a low-key monster game, which sounds ridiculous, but he drew 2 significant defensive pass interference penalties.
Right.
Along with having 2 catches for 15 yards. But all 3 receivers, because, you look at the box score and you're like, Lockett's just not involved. And maybe he is slightly limited because he's been dealing with the thigh, but he was getting the vertical targets. JSN got a couple too, but JSN was more in that. He has 9.8 yards per catch here with 12 catches for 117 yards. But nonetheless, he was getting his fair dosage of the short stuff. He just so happened to take the choice route on a 3rd down for like 10 plus yards, which was super impressive. But it was caught the A dot I would like to see on those things. Obviously, it was so exciting that 3rd and 7, which we've already spoke about, because that was like the first. Oh my gosh, it's like over 16 yards, bang over the middle type throw to JSN. He's come down with it. I know there was an earlier one which was like very similar to the Huskies touchdown in the Apple Cup, where it's like double posts and out of like an unexpected look, and the DB got there, and JSN kind of could have been a bit stronger at the catch point. but they were trying to target him in those areas, which was exciting.
He so we got to so his I think his ADOT. I mean, I tried to calculate it really quick from his past chart. It was like 9.8. So I was just curious.
That's so sick.
And also, I would note he did not receive a single screen this game. So if you look at his ADOT last year from week
Didn't
6
he?
on, maybe one.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, he
I
had
think there was a
some.
bubble.
Okay, maybe one. Well,
I could be off.
his non-screen on his non-screen targets last year from week 6 on, which I identify kind of as his mini breakout, where he kind of arrives in the offense, was 10 yards, 10 yards per attempt, air yards per attempt from week 6 on his non-screen. So to me, this is just natural, organic year 1 to year 2 growth from a receiver who is no longer receiving screens because they signed another guy to do that, Laviska Shenault. And now, and then also multiply by him just getting the targets this game. I feel like with the three-headed monster they have at receiver, it's going to be like 2 or 3 guys collecting targets, and then the one guy gets relegated for that game, especially with this O-line. I mean, someone's got to take the fall. Also, it's going to be dictated by matchups, right? Dictated by what the defense is doing, who they are not taking away. It wouldn't be realistic anyway for 3 receivers to register big numbers every game. Someone's going to have a down game.
It's crazy to me as well that like the Pats have obviously Christian Gonzalez, who's such a talented corner. And you're like, oh, he's shadowing DK Metcalf. It's going to be a great battle. And you kind of think, Gonzalez had some good reps there. Like he did good. Like he defended that big fade ball. They tried to go after him. He did good. And then you look at DK's stat line, it's still 10 catches for 129 receiving yards and a touchdown. It's like, oh.
I will say, go ahead.
No. Say what I like where.
Well, I will say, I don't think the DK Metcalf becoming a guy we haven't seen yet is coming. He's the same DK has always been, which is a very good player. And he's just not injured. He's healthy. We have to remember he was hurt last year. And that's fine. Like he's not going to, even if they're not drops, he's not going to be that guy that makes a lot of tough catches. That's not, unfortunately, but he's still bringing tremendous value because you'll find him in targetable scenarios, and he's only targetable because he's open and he's one position on stuff.
Right. Like on the drive where Seattle absolutely had to have it, the end of regular time, Geno runs out of the pocket from pressure, and finds DK, who's worked back to the quarterback. The DB has to honor that he can take off down the field. And they're probably in man. And DK can work back and be a big target, make the catch, and there you go. And it's such a valuable catch. Then the other one, which is in the mind, is the 56-yard touchdown where it's a busted coverage. Now, it is a busted coverage, but not many people can run that fast on a slot fade and just be that effortless and punish a busted coverage that quickly. And so that's where his real value is. But it's also cool to see them keep, give him like 1 or 2 deep targets a game. Not that previous coordinators didn't, but I'm just talking about the present now.
Yeah.
Now, on the busted coverage, Griff, we probably didn't talk about it enough last week, but tempo was a part of Grubb's game plan, if you like. And tempo is a big buzzword, but we have seen the effects of it, the tangible type of effects of it on the Pats defense, where they're trying to do loads of different checks at the line. I heard Nate Tice talk about how they confused Joe Burrow and the Bengals with it. Well, Seattle seemed to get the advantage on the Pats, particularly in the first half, where they forced New England not to be able to huddle. And Geno had such great command of the offense to be able to get them in different looks and punish what New England was doing. And the Metcalf touchdown, the biggest example of it, where they check into zone versus empty, probably have an empty check. They don't seem to know which one of them is meant to be the deep path defender, or they get their eyes caught in the backfield and Metcalf scores the easiest touchdown of his life. But I mean, I don't know how much tempo's a gimmick versus a thing. Like it's a thing right now, but it could become a gimmick. But
it worked this game.
It depends on success, doesn't it?
Right. And the thing is that if you don't get the defensive looks that you're trying to get from it, you can just stop you can just slow it down.
which was a bit. I think a bit of the offense struggles in the second half were they weren't getting the looks. Then they're having to, okay, what are we doing now? And then the O line gets angsty and they false start,
Right.
or something
Right. Right.
along those lines.
Also, yeah, a lot of penalties. This is going to be a high penalty team, offense and defense, I think.
Well, this is the thing. You say a lot of penalties, and I thought the same.
Or
It says
was
they
I
only had
wrong?
6 penalties for 50 yards
Oh,
total,
okay. That's
which
not
that
bad.
it feels way higher. I think it's just the magnitude of the penalties. Like they're coming in really poor moments.
Or maybe because like the offensive ones come really early and they just stick out in mind. Maybe.
Anything else on the offense?
Well,
Mike McDonald described it as a dynamite game for Geno Smith.
yeah,
Gino, full of praise for him.
Geno's sick, dude. They need to extend him like now.
Well, yeah, because I forget who it was who tweeted it, but it was like a picture of this QB class in the college football this year. The guys coming out.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary. I haven't watched them, but it looks pretty scary.
Interesting.
Geno has some leverage.
Yeah. And Geno Smith is the franchise. Can you imagine in 2019 when they bring him in? He's just a backup. It's Geno Smith. Oh, is he the guy that got punched in the jaw in New York? Oh, that's funny, man. I still remember when I was going back and I watched every single Geno throw he's ever made in an NFL uniform, including preseason. And
Right.
that obviously when it really dawned on me that Pete Carroll and John Schneider are really rolling with Geno Smith and Drew Lock in their post Russell Wilson window, when I'm swearing up and down that no, Pete does value offensive football. He does take it seriously, etc. He does take the quarterback position. And then they go with Russell Wilson's career backup and Drew Lock. I'm like, holy shit, what is happening here? And so I'm like, okay, well, what do they actually see in Drew? And then like, okay, yeah, Geno, whatever. The Jags game was fun, but lightning won't strike twice. And then I'm watching Drew Lock's tape, and I'm like, this guy really sucks, man. I mean, there's talent, and I'm rooting for him, but he's not good. And then I went back and rewatched Geno's stuff, did a little unbucketing. I'm like, there's a heartbeat. There's a heartbeat, and Pete is going to let the best man win. We know that. We know that much. He's going to let the best man win. So I got a little brain poison, but it's like what really won me over, because I'm thinking, okay, can he be, he's got Shane Waldron came from the McVay tree. Can he be like Goff light? Can he be Goff light? That's what I'm thinking. And I believed in the O-line that they had going into that season, because they ended the previous year really good, right? At O-line. I believed in the receivers. Can he be Goff light? And then when I was watching him, the more I was watching him, I was like, wait a second. Geno has an arm. Geno can actually throw the ball. Geno has a better arm than Drew Lock. And like we're talking about, like you've got the stable vet versus the talented young guy who needs to be reined in dichotomy. But I'm like, no. Geno's more talented than Drew Lock. And then that Bears game in preseason when he's ripping like 7-step dig routes over the middle, I'm like, okay, Geno, anything's possible with this now. And here we are. But it's just insane. But they need to give 34-year-old Geno Smith a 3-year, $140 million deal right now.
How fitting that the 3rd and 6 to Zach Charbonnet, which it didn't end the game, but it got them closer to field goal range, picked up a new set of downs. And then they did end the game. But how fitting that was the exact same play concept that, if you remember when they lost at the Dallas Cowboys, when Geno went off that game, but they had that play where they tried to leak DJ Dallas out of the backfield. He got pushed back by the line, and Micah Parsons came screaming unblocked off the edge, and Geno just couldn't get the play off, and the Seahawks lost. Seattle called the exact same play in this 3rd and 6, and Geno, they just executed better. Geno got enough depth in the pocket. Charbonnet managed to get out of the backfield without being pushed back by DeMarcus Lawrence, and they actually blocked the play side edge, which I don't know. I still don't really know why they didn't full slide to Parsons and leave the other edge unblocked in Dallas. But anyway, Dallas is in the past, and nice that in the present and 2024 with his new offensive staff, they got it done. When it mattered most, and Griff another mesh concept because it's just a variation of mesh. So let it be known that Ryan Grubb, when his back is to the wall, he's gonna call mesh if he's expecting man, but maybe if he's expecting zone. Anyway,
yeah.
I also liked spacing wise. Felt they seem pretty good at coaching pick combinations, not just the Charbonnet play, but like Lockett had a play where it was JSN who caught the ball, but Lockett ran into a dude and just turned his bat and flopped on the floor, which was a very good sell. But in the past, do you remember that for ages everyone was like, oh, but Andy Reid always can call pick plays, but the Seahawks can't. They always get flagged for offensive pass interference. It's not fair. Well, now they seem to be able to do it a bit more. So, I mean, it's probably just random variants.
They're bad at the actual blocking from their auxiliary blockers, but then like the cheeky BS stuff, like they're really crafty.
They're finesse.
Yeah. This is a finesse team, 100%.
Oh God.
But they're a cool finesse team.
Oh, Misfit saying in chat a 48.5% pressure rate this week. Is that accurate? That's crazy. It seems about right.
I mean, it felt like the Steelers game last year, right? And even the Cowboys game where he's just hitching up when he should, kind of gaining more depth when he should, sliding, hitching up, hitching back up, get into the. I mean, he's just on one, man. I think they're going to be average at best in the red zone this year. So they need to find a way to throw more touchdowns from outside the red zone. That's when this offense was at its probably best, the first 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks of 2022, when they were just throwing touchdowns from 40 yards out, 50 yards out routinely. So anyway, they'll get there. Grubb's stuff is good. He gets guys open downfield. It's just, will the protection allow them to take advantage of it? And realistically, Geno probably isn't going to be this good every week, or he could be, but he needs more margin for error. He needs more margin for error.
Well, like the almost pick where it's underthrown, because he's hit, and I don't know if he's actually trying to get it down there in the end. I think he had a second thought. But if that gets picked off, suddenly, you're talking margin for error. That's what happens when you're in just like hell, basically. So,
yep.
Anyhow, right. Before we get to the offense, Henry, thank you so much for the donation. And again, appreciate your support, Henry. And then the snail, thank you again. Right, Griff. What are you typing away? Are you having to defend someone?
No.
Are you on the Twitter streets?
No, I'm actually not.
Okay. Good.
All right.
So we're done with the offense, right?
Yeah, we're done with the offense. I can't believe we talked about offense for 40 minutes.
I know. Well, that was kind of the main positive, although some tempering of the enthusiasm, I suppose. Right. Mike McDonald said after the game, we can't be giving up 180 yards rushing, which please let this not be the third year in a row of terrible Seahawks run defense. Antonio Gibson had 11 carries for 96 yards. The Patriots ran the ball 36 times, 5.1 yards per carry, and 185 yards rushing total. Seattle had real difficulty with particularly their jumbo formation, as the broadcast called it, but real heavy personnel, center pulling type stuff. To me, Griff, the run defense overall, the jumbo thing is like, okay, we've seen it a couple of times. We get used to it, and they did towards the, right at the end, they did stop it. But everything else comes down to when they play, when they blitz Spoon or the nickel to get back into bare spacing, and they played 3 deep, 3 under fire zone behind it, or they just played, middle field closed, obvious stuff at times, they were a bit better at stopping the run. But when they play the two high safeties back there and they're asking them to ball fit and the linebackers to do a bit more, they get problems. What was a bit more troubling to me is it felt like as the game progressed, the one high stuff started getting worked more, and I need to go back and
Agreed.
see how much of that was base, how much of that was nickel,
Right.
because obviously base they're largely odd spaced, nickel they're largely even spaced, although there was one snap of nickel there. But I just think, McDonald's saying we can't be doing that, but
He's
that's true. But
yeah. Well, he's got to feel out working out how he wants to apply his packages, because again, if he wants to stuff the run, he can come out against 12 or 21 personnel, tight end wings. He can come out in 3-4 base and load the box, and they'll be fine. I'll live with the results. I think he would too. They might give up the occasional 4 yards per carry type game, but most of the time they're going to keep it under 4 in that scenario. But obviously he doesn't want to do that. So one of the compromises is you play big nickel against it. And I'm curious, like you said, we'll go and look at the tape and we'll see where they're really giving up these runs. But like, are they giving up runs in big nickel one high? That would be interesting.
There's a couple of plays of big nickel. You're talking about like Rayshon Jenkins playing there, right? There's a couple of plays where he's looking real stout and strong at the point of attack. But like we saw with Jenkins' tape last year when we watched the Jag stuff, there's a couple of plays where he just completely whiffs on a tackle, and it's like, what the hell? Like you look like a big nickel, you walk like a big nickel, you hit like a big nickel against blockers, but then when it comes to the tackle, occasionally you just do like you become a very small, timid nickel, or just a guy who just it's not even timid. He wants to do it, he just misses. It's like his controller dies. And I don't want to pick on one guy, but
right.
It's just he is the big nickel in the defense, and I think he was what McDonald, like there was a period where they put very early in the game Hunter Henry flexed out wide on Trey Brown, and it was like they were going to be playing like big ball out there and picking on Trey Brown's size.
Yeah,
and Spoon's not much bigger, but that combined with the Pats, having this duo run game and C gap issues, and you're not wanting Spoon in that area, but you wanting the bigger body there. That I think saw Jenkins worked in more and more, and that was probably the game plan for them anyway. But I don't know. We need to watch the tape back, but ultimately, as we've said on the podcast, second half of the season run defense, Mike McDonald's Ravens unit were 30th in the league. First half of the season, they were 4th. This year, right, they've struggled, and there's similar runs which are hitting on them, and you need to have. And they've got really good D-line talent. We like Tyrell Dodson coming downhill, although he had a very disappointing 2-back run fit. I feel Tyree Snipe really struggled when he came in. It was all going very fast. His eyes were in the wrong place. The keys
run
were kind of
defense
lying
was
to him.
rough for him.
So some of it is kind of the linebackers, and they will improve. At the same time, it's an NFL season. There's not much room to improve when you're in the thick of it, and now teams have this tape to add to it. Ultimately, though, as I said, I didn't watch this game live, but I heard they were struggling in run defense. Watching it back, I did get the sense that if it came down to it, McDonald could stop the run or could get it done, but some of it was like in between the 20s, and then in the red zone will tighten up, and not kind of the run version of bend don't break, but it is somewhat concerning when you think about how this looks against a team who can genuinely play action new and can be a bit more balanced in terms of their passing game and their passing receiver talent. Because, I mean, let's be honest, the Patriots, Brissett was a pretty good game manager in this game, and their receivers made some plays, but they're not near what the best teams have. And if the Seahawks have playoff aspirations, which they do, then they will have to face better units. And I guess Detroit is the big test in 2 weeks' time of this stuff we're talking about.
Right. To your point about like the run defense, like when it came down to it, they stopped them. I think that was a lot of it were the defensive linemen themselves, especially the interior, making really impressive plays.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of like, I mean, when they gave up those big runs, I don't think it was rarely ever guys losing their blocks up front. It was just more the collective run fit, losing leverage right at the wrong time.
Which McDonald mentioned leverage like that,
Right,
Griff.
right, and the linebackers just not knowing how to, stack, track, and fall back. Like they're struggling with that, especially when they're down a gap. But then also when the gaps move, even when they're gapped out. So when they're in the one high stuff or fitting with the nickel and two high, and you get those pull schemes to the bubble, usually to the C gap, and that's they're having a hard time working over the top of it and knowing. Really, it's organizational stuff. I suspect the linebackers won't be graded well against the run, but I have sympathy for them because I really think the scheme puts them at a disadvantage for a lot of that. Again, that's the whole point. You're trying to divert more resources toward the pass, and this is what you have to live with up front. It's the conundrum every DC defensive coordinator everywhere at every level of football has to contend with. If you want to have two safeties in the seam, then you're going to be down a gap. If you want to be gapped out, then you're going to be one down in the seam, right? So it's that balance between the second seam and that extra gap in the run fit. That's the principal question all DCs ask themselves, like you do, Matty, because you're a freaking defensive coordinator. It's just that relationship, right, between the pass and the run. So obviously in today's game, I think in the aggregate it worked out though, because the pass defense was pretty good. There were some drives where like Brissett is sharp in ways that Bo Nix wasn't last week, right? A lot of the similar concepts that Brissett's just going to execute that Nix won't. But I do find it encouraging that he moved the ball on play extension. So that means he was holding the ball. And I suspect the coverage is doing pretty good with some of the intermediate stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there was that play that the broadcast highlighted of Tyrese Knight in like the cover 2 side, panic dropping. So, he's felt he's come up a bit quick against the play fake, his play action, and rather than just backpedaling looking at the QB, he's turned, found the receiver, and got underneath the curl route that Brissett was looking to go at. That was a good kind of intermediate coverage type play, albeit not purely like over the middle in the way that was the biggest issue from last week. But yeah, I feel the real issue was as you said, the play extension stuff. Hunter Henry had 8 catches for 109 receiving yards. And at first you're like, oh my gosh, that something terrible must have happened down the seams or over the middle in the intermediate, as we've been talking about. But no, it was just sort of crazy type Brissett running out the pocket and then heaving it or touching it to Henry in that type of area, which gets drained out when the linebacker doesn't know whether to go or to stay. And I think that could be better coached. And I think the way that they contain the QB could be better coached. That being said, how many of those happened in the first half compared to the second? I do feel Seattle adjusted to what was going on there. And, I see a question here on from Misfit saying, what did they do with Julian Love to deal with Hunter Henry to make things better? And Jay saying, I heard on the broadcast they assigned Love to cover him. I mean, Henry did beat Love one time over the middle. I don't necessarily think it was more the Love thing, although obviously we need to watch the tape back, and the people on the broadcast and are saying that would have a better view than we did on the television. But I think it was more better pass rush rushing, better rush lane discipline, some effective stunts from Mike McDonald up front. And then, you can only have so many broken plays.
Right.
And then linebackers being more disciplined and coverage defenders being more disciplined at let the pass rush contain the QB. We will stick on our guys and plaster them down the field. But we'll have to wait for the All-22 for that. I don't know what you think of that, Griff.
I think that the big what if for the defense is if they connected on a lot more of these sacks. They would have put them behind the sticks. And that probably kills 2 or 3 of the Patriots scoring drives. And they could have held them to 6 or 10, but they didn't. And the run defense ended up mattering because Brissett was able to convert just enough passes here and there.
Yeah, and and he had that drive with the 2 big penalties on Witherspoon, which the
Right.
first one felt ridiculous. In fact, the first
Yeah.
one's actually crap. Like, why can't you hit a receiver? Like, that is absolute crap.
Yeah,
It's
I wasn't
so
a fan.
bad, so bad. It shouldn't. Anyway, as Mookie Alexander Field Goals, friend of the show, points out, in the second half, Jacoby Brissett was 4 of 8 for 32 yards, with Hunter Henry only having 1 catch for 11 yards, which that does reflect the adjustment. So, yeah, for me, Griff, the run defense, some of it is like, it's a scheme weakness, which they know because they're playing more coverage. But then some of it is more concerning to me because it seems more about they're trying to stop it a bit more. So they're putting an extra hat in the box and they're still not able to. And there's a variety, there's not one fix for that. There's not just one reason. Otherwise, it'd be simple.
The other
There's a
thing,
number of things which go into that which trouble me. And I don't
right?
know if I haven't seen yet that they are able to address them. And I think they become a problem against the best teams in the NFL.
When they do play one high, I'll be curious to see if the defensive linemen do their or gap and a half stuff as much, their primary, secondary, because when you're gapped out, you just play your gap that you're aligned to. It's so simple. You just play half the man. You don't need to cross face, but when you do, then that can throw the linebacker off. The linebacker's trying to then fit off of you, and then you can have 2 guys in the same gap and leave a gash open. And I wonder if that's what happened on some of those like C gap runs where the running back was just doing a really good job at pacing it out and then hitting behind the puller. I wonder if they change the run scheme mechanics. But like when the defensive line knows that a safety is rolling down, just get upfield and just kill it. Like Dodson wants to kill. Dodson does not want to scrape and be lateral and be patient and wait. He just wants to go. Take advantage of that. If you're in one high, just let everyone go. That's my line of thinking. But maybe they want to keep the techniques consistent.
Well, we saw the problem with when they're not on the same page on that. It was one of the big Gibson runs where he's running right. It's like weak, wide zone. And Murphy absolutely destroys his guy. I think he was playing 3-tech. He absolutely wrecks his guy right into the backfield, kind of in that style you're talking about. Meanwhile, Draymond Jones on the edge is like, I don't know if he's trying to gap and a half or what, but he's not at the same depth. And so the backs bubbles out really quick because Murphy's made him bubble out really quick. And Murphy's like trying to dance on the edge, and then he hasn't really set an edge in a way that is conducive to the way that Murphy's played it. And so, it hits off Jones's edge, and there's no one there, and it gets big yardage. So they definitely need to, get on the same page with that. But ultimately, Griff, when it mattered most, they did get the run stop. Like the 3rd and 1 in overtime, they come out in a 6-2 look, and they get after it, and I think it was Dodson got in on the tackle. So when it mattered most, they did get a run stop, so that's encouraging. And, if that had hit for a 60-yard walk-off touchdown or whatever, we'd be even more miserable.
Yeah.
But instead, they gave their offense a chance to go win the game, which they did. Other thing that stood out to me on the defense, Griff, is their pass rush chemistry is really improving, as it would, but I really like how on stunts, like the 3rd and 6, where it forced the Pats into taking a 48-yard field goal because they got a sack for Byron Murphy, actually, his first career sack. But I love how when they're running games up front, like pass rush games, if a guy's lane is blocked, so like they looped Hall around the back of the 3-tech, I think, while the 3-tech looped outside. And anyway, Hall's path was blocked, but rather than just running into a guy, he like nudged Murphy through the gap and gave him an extra jolt of momentum to beat the lineman in front of him, and that helped him get the sack. I really like how they kind of they help each other out when rushing games and push each other through spaces, which it sounds logical, but I haven't really seen a team.
It's just
as good at that.
It's
really good coaching.
Yeah. Like when you got one guy rushing deep, you got the other guy kind of rushing inside, and for like the edges. Like rarely do you have both edges trying to rush a deep arc, outside rush. I wonder how they plan and coordinate that. But Yeah, Boye Mafe he's leading the league in pressures right now according to Next Gen Stats. And I think he also was like doing that the first half of last year too. But I think he looks even better though this year, as he did at this point last year. And last year he started off great. But between him, Derek Hall had like 2 or 3 clean wins, outside wins, and like you see like how low he can get and still churn the edge. He doesn't have to beat the hands; he can just dip and rip.
He was good as a run defender as well, by the way.
That's great. Yeah, that's really good stuff. And then yeah, Murphy and Leonard Williams, they were winning, so they got a pass rush. And this is a pass rush we're seeing even without Uchenna Nwosu, man. So
because I felt in this game, Griff, I don't know if it was because like Brissett in week 10 last year had been pretty effective at finding the quick hole, or if it was because they felt they didn't want to, they didn't need as much stuff, or the Pats were in some downs and distances or some personnel which threatened runs, so they didn't want to get too exotic with it, where they could get run out of the look. But it felt like they didn't do as much sim pressures and stuff, and they more just brought 5 or just straight up rushed 4. And yeah, they did games, but it was like your standard 4 that you expect to rush, and not as much of the simulated pressures that you come to expect with McDonald and Lyman dropping into coverage.
It's on early downs. They're not doing much beyond like seam caps where they blitz.
Oh, early downs. No, yeah, they're doing. It's just 3 deep, 3 under fire zone, and occasionally 2 deep, 4 under or whatever.
Right.
But so that seems more like what offensive set they've got more than
right. They'll spice it up on third downs and stuff, but like I think McDonald is clearly of the mind of, well. So
it felt less spicy to me on third down as well. Is kind of what I was saying.
Right.
Today.
So you wonder with McDonald, he remembers how his tenure started in Baltimore as the DC because he was there before he went to Michigan, right? But he remembers how like it did not start off great. And I thought, well, did they scheme differently when they doubled Kyle Hamilton snaps and got Roquan in there? And like aside from like overt pass scenarios where they want different coverage tools out of their mic and stuff, yeah, they did, but their structure was really the same. And I think it was just too much stuff. He was maybe, I don't know, I'm not going to speak for him, of course, but like too antsy, too excited to show the league what he's got. And it was just too chaotic the first half of 2022. So I wonder if in his mind, is he like, okay, well, I'm going to start small and then grow from there with new players and then also the new staff. No one's worked together before, the exception of 1 or 2. And then expand from there just so that guys can get the techniques down and know how to communicate with each other. Then you can layer it in. The other side of it is that you've played the Broncos and the Patriots ultimately, and you don't necessarily need to dip into your proprietary specialized such stuff and such. So I don't know. We'll see. The Dolphins will be a big test, at least schematically. The quarterback play probably won't be as good because Tua is out. Hopefully he's recovering as well as he can. That's really scary for him with the concussions. Skyler will go over the middle. He'll rip a dig route. So
you love him.
McDaniel could do something with that, but he might be overzealous at times. We'll see. But yeah, so interesting state that they're in.
Okay,
ultimately
so
a good state.
We haven't even mentioned arguably the biggest play of the game, which was with the Pats kicking from their 48-yard line a field goal. Sorry, kicking a 48-yard field goal. Julian Love blocked it, which was big because it meant Seattle only needed a field goal to tie the game rather than a touchdown to not lose and win. So anything to say about that, Griff, other than well done, Julian Love. That's a great play. I mean, he said afterwards in the press conference that he just decided to go on the other side of the formation where usually he'd be on the away side, but he went to the block side, and you saw the impact of that because that's the side that Reek Woolen obviously rushes, Seattle's quickest, best player who has previously blocked field goals, and the edge for the Pats, the like tackle, if you like, even though it's tight end type, he got depth for Woolen's speed rush, and Love managed to find a way to dip inside of whoever it was trying to block him and get a block on. And that was significant.
That was a great play from Love. That will
Anything more to say on that?
I mean, that might have saved the game, really, to that point, right? At least.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'd
you
have
could say
been.
lots of things saved the game or in one direction or the other, but
That's how you win, I guess, because it
yeah.
felt at times like Seattle was trying to give it away, and then they didn't. So
There is some like there is this idea that like Pete Carroll liked close games. I mean, he said as much. I like close games, but do we really think he's not trying to blow every team out that he can? Of course he is. Every coach is. But then when McDonald was asked, like, well, what's your philosophy about how you want to win games? And he pretty much just says, like, well, we want to do well all the time. It's like, no duh, of course. But then the first two, but there was some like that was taken in a different direction, like interpreted as though, like, yeah, no more can you win the game in the fourth quarter. And their 2 games have been won in the fourth quarter so far. Just some poetic irony there.
very poetic.
I think McDonald will take a win any way he can get them because he's a good coach and can coach through all sorts of scenarios, which, I mean, I like how he manages the game in terms of just keeping guys right, Never, ever did that defense did the players feel like they could not get a turnover at any point, right? Like the confidence was there all the way, even when they were getting run on for some of those drives. And it was like demoralizing to watch, but the players didn't seem demoralized. So
It
I
was
don't
a
know.
strange. It was a strange feeling game to me. It didn't feel like I couldn't really take it seriously that Seattle was in too much trouble. And again, I was watching knowing what happened, so that is a bit different. But
Right.
it felt like they were, more talented and not completely shooting themselves in the foot. And also, when your quarterback's playing that well, it's always
Yeah.
hard to reconcile the fact that you might not win the game. Along with the defense was causing real issues for the Patriots passing game / didn't actually have anything to worry about with the Patriots passing game other than those kind of Henry plays which dried up in the second half. So that just made it feel have an odd vibe to it. Anything else, Griff, that you want to comment on here with this game? We should say injury wise, Boye Mafe luckily only has a knee contusion, and Baker, the linebacker, has a hamstring injury after he covered a wheel route and left the game pretty early. Did end incomplete that wheel route coverage, but that's why Tyrese Knight got in the game. McDonald's keeping it pretty tight about those guys. Said they have to find out. I imagine Maffei will go for like a precautionary scan on that knee to just check there's nothing else going on there. Hopefully not, because he had a really solid game up to that point again. So, yeah, Griff.
Yeah.
What else do you want to talk about?
I think the only thing we didn't really talk about were third downs were good on both sides of the ball. That was good.
Do you have any data which supports said
They
claim?
went 7 for 15 on offense.
Wow, above.
Which is just below 50%.
Damn it.
We'll take that. That's good. You really want to be above 40%.
Uh-huh.
That's the above average range.
You do? That's what you think?
That's what I think. Yeah.
Cool.
What do you think about that? Do you have an opinion?
I think you should be 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Patriots were 6 of 16 on third down, to your point, which that's below 40%, Griff. So that's really good. That's where you want to be.
Bang, bang, bang. So, good team that's working some things out. They have a guard problem. They might have a run defense problem. We'll see if they have a pass defense problem against really good offenses. We'll see.
So chat, thank you so much for your questions. I think we've answered quite a few of them. So if I don't read out your question, we'll have said it on the podcast earlier. So thank you so much for submitting them. Right. Axel asking, was Rick Woolen targeted today? I think this is disrespectful. I'm going to forget the name of the player. But kind of late in the game, it might have been Osborne made a good play on Woolen on a crosser across the field. So, yeah, I think he was targeted like once or twice. But, yeah, he was largely quiet.
Yep. Yeah, the corner is covered.
Yeah, the Spoon just had that one drive where I think the second flag was definitely a flag. Like, if they call that consistently, which They don't, which is stupid. But anyway, you just have to be very subtle with how you catch the guy. Are we Julian Love fans? Yeah, asked Jordan.
Do I go first?
Yeah, because you definitely did used to you hate him.
I don't hate the guy. I think he's a great guy.
That's exactly what someone. Okay.
Sorry if you're hearing like weird gnawing. My dogs are chewing on their bones right now.
That's okay.
Their dog bones. Love. I don't think he had a great game today. I thought he played great against Denver. In one-on-one coverage, he got. I mean, he didn't get worked. There wasn't a lot there, right? But
He had
gave up
some
the
tough
one-
plays today.
Yeah, the one to Henry, and then he had two like little stick routes. But like, I don't defending quick game is like a lot of that's just leverage. Like the scheme yields it. So I'm not gonna like put that like on.
He had a good pass breakup on a stick route.
Did he? Oh, that's right. That was a good break. That was him understanding the situation as well and just using all of his indicators to his advantage. Against the run, I don't really remember if he contributed to the woes or not. We'll have to, watch the tape. I suspect he overall had a like pretty inoffensive game, not one that should move you off, whatever your opinion of him is. I think that him being the field safety is a better use of his talents than how he was used last year. Although in theory, I thought he's supposed to be what he was last year. It just didn't work out. But this new role for him is working. It's not the first time that's happened. When they traded for Quandre Diggs, he was a slot corner in Detroit, and they converted him to a deep middle safety and a field safety. Look how that went. It went great. There just wasn't room for him to be the field safety last year because they already had Quandre Diggs, and his yards per cover snap was really good. So just a case of like there wasn't room for him to be his best self, and now there is. And Mike McDonald's taking full advantage. So,
yeah. That's a good question. Should we be more concerned about the run defense or the run offense? I think, is it possible to be equally concerned? I mean, I wrote before the season that two of the 4 keys to the season were run defense and run offense related at SeahawksOnTape.com. So, Griff, can you pick one? I'd say probably the run offense, which seems counterintuitive given, running doesn't matter, even though it does to a point.
I wonder how much Walker's absence mattered. Not that I mean, I really don't think Charbonnet is bad at all.
I think
Walker
you needed
creates-
that back who could bounce out and have a bit more speed and agility. Not that there was much there, but yeah.
Yeah.
But just a guy who can create a bit more in an explosive way.
Sure.
Griff, you have a really good point, like on rushing offense, about how certain types of runs are actually.
Was it the whole unbucketing thing?
Yeah.
Well, rather, there are certain types of passes that don't actually compete with runs.
As in, runs are more efficient than them.
Right. So the run game is all about, if you're going to be a high volume run team, whatever comprises that volume fluctuation or that increase rather, make sure that those runs are only coming at the expense of your bad passes. If you're trying to optimize yourself statistically,
So an extreme example would be like taking 100 deep shots in a game where you're going to complete maybe, I don't know.
If you take 100 and by that point consider like the defense is adjusting to you, you probably complete 0. You might complete 1. You might complete
the first 2 or something. Yeah.
Right. But if it's when you think of shotgun, when the funny thing is that when teams decide to run more, at least the smart teams, their shot rate doesn't actually go down, and even then their intermediate throw rate doesn't go down. What does go down are the low ADOT throws, whether that's quick game or just the checkdowns within your 5-step offense or whatever. So, and then if you look at the EPA of those short passes in some of those runs, like the run game is competitive with it. So just to use an example, because that's kind of the epicenter of the discourse was nationally over the whole run thing was started really in large part by the analytics community. And many of them were Seahawks fans, right? And they've put in a lot of great work, but like I would argue in hindsight, using their data, like using what they've evolved my brain, my football brain, using that thought process. If you look at where Pete Carroll was running, where he wasn't, he was optimizing his offense to run as much as he did. It was better to run more than to run less. Or in some cases, it didn't actually matter because the quick game and the run and the zone run, the gun run game were equivalent to one another. It didn't matter. Chris Carson gun run or a stick route to Jacob Hollister, doesn't matter. It's the same thing. You're going to get 4 yards either way. So,
and as we've said before, Wash Farm, just an extension of what Griff's talking about, but you can just generally only do so much of one thing, and it on offense. And when you've got a O-line who's struggling, they were struggling in run blocking as well today, but you really do need to be able to run the football just a bit. And so I don't know if I'd overreact to this one game either. And like I said, the Pats are a very good run defense. So this could
don't
just
have
be a
enough
blip.
data. Yeah.
But
we just don't have enough data.
If the run, if both of these were as bad as they were today, then both are really bad. So.
Right.
And you'll go, if you're lucky enough to make the playoffs, you'll go one and done because that just does not. Both those things would stop you beating a good team. Yeah. Particularly when tendencies get dialed into and stuff and weaknesses. Right. Great stuff, guys. How are we doing at guard? Do you anticipate we see Haynes crack the starting lineup versus the Dolphins? That's Christian Haynes, obviously. I don't.
I think they're going to keep rotating him.
I think
he gave up pressure on his first drive.
Gave up pressure and then seemed to be okay. He had an unnecessary roughness penalty where he just seemed to pancake a guy too much. We didn't see what actually happened after, but he was going at it with Keon White. I don't know. It's the kind of, do you want the run blocking or the pass blocking? They obviously feel like Haynes is more of a left guard long term. Yeah. I don't think there's a fix for the interior O-line necessarily. They just need to get better playing together. And
so who do they trade for?
Right.
What sorry team with a good guard do they trade for?
I don't think John Schneider's going to trade for a guard.
God, man, dude, they really could have had a masterpiece in year one. They were close. It was within their means, and I really think they did not optimize their cap allocation.
Oh, you should.
Because I'm all about.
First time I've heard you say that,
Matty. I'm all about optimizing cap allocation.
Yeah, that's why I love football.
No, he's traded for a guard before. Remember the Gabe Jackson trade that just happened during the offseason?
Yeah, and why did he do that? Like he personally really wanted to make that move and wasn't didn't feel the need to, or he was.
We don't need to bring up old wounds.
No. Why would we?
Yeah, I like Batonio though, Liam. Also, figuring out mediocrity. Your baseball analogy for Walker and Charbonnet is really good. I agree with that. K9 is a knuckleballer. Sharps is an 89-mile-per-hour two-seamer with full control. In the aggregate, they are a wash, but in the wild situation, the knuckleballer can bail you out. I agree. That's great.
Where's that? That's a good...
Scroll up a bit.
Very good.
I love baseball analogies. I like how all sport commentators, basketball, baseball, or basketball, football, they always relate everything back to baseball.
I find that it's probably something deep in the psyche that makes that happen.
Yeah, well, I think because all these guys kind of grew up with baseball, and then they go their separate ways with the sport at some point when they specialize in something else. But
it's America's pastime, right?
Yeah, and that's slowly changing. But most of these guys are 40 plus, right? So they were definitely growing up playing baseball.
Wow, Griff. That sounds, shockingly like some closing wisdom.
That was not, no. My streak of not giving any closing wisdom will continue. That was not wise. That was stuff we all know. No wisdom this week, maybe next week.